Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod's Sleep Stories. My name is Arif, and tonight I will be guiding you on a magical, romantic journey into the ruins of an ancient castle and the meadows of Scottish Highlands while exploring true, passionate love. Before we begin, however, let us take a moment to find comfort in the space we are in. Here, in this moment, there is nothing for you to do but relax. Our days and lives can feel so busy, but now it is time to slow down. Close your eyes and allow yourself to sink into the mattress as though it is a pile of soft autumn leaves. Feel the comfort in allowing your body to fully and completely relax as you sink deeper and deeper and deeper into the mattress. Take a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Feel the tension in your chest melt away as your lungs and body are nourished by that deep, slow breath. For a moment, picture the flame of a candle. Can you hear the crackle of the candle? Can you see it flicker as it sways from side to side? Side to side, side to side? For a moment, think about the color of your candle. Think about the scent. Is it pine, roses, or the smell of apples on a cool autumn day? Perhaps it's the smell of fresh-cut lilacs, or the aroma of linen drying in the fresh breeze. As you inhale, picture the flame on your candle growing larger. It's not out of control, not an inferno, just a healthily glowing flame. As you exhale, picture that flame shrinking smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. As you inhale again, picture the flame growing larger. As that nourishing breath fills your lungs, it's feeding the warmth of that flame, feeding the comfort within your body. As the breath leaves, the flame is relaxing and returning to its natural state in a slow, controlled manner. For a few moments, just follow that flame as it grows bigger, 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 and then smaller, 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 smaller. The flame is yours to control and yours to nourish. It belongs to you and you alone. Embrace the soothing feeling that can radiate through your body from that simple flame. Now that we've taken the time to find comfort and peace in the space we are in, let us begin our story. Long, long ago, in the rolling green hills of the Scottish Highland, there was a small village known as Briar Rose. It was nestled between a large, rocky mountain and a winding river that laced through the countryside. The town was enveloped in unimaginable beauty. The trees and cedar forests were lush, full of wildlife. The meadows were teeming with wildflowers and sweet grass that swayed in the gentle breeze dancing its way toward the cobblestone streets. But Briar Rose wasn't a town of brightness or sunshine. Briar Rose was a town that was cloaked in a thick layer of fog nearly every day. Rain fell almost constantly, but the citizens of the town didn't mind. They loved the way the rain tippy-tapped on the rooftops as they drank their evening tea by the crackling fire. They loved the way the rain stirred the earth alive and made the air smell so fresh and invigorating. In fact, the townspeople loved almost everything about the town, except for the strange fellow who lived in the castle in the woods. A dirt path led to his home through a dark cedar forest. The path twirled and curved its way up the cliffside, meandering alongside 1,000-year-old trees and stones. The man who lived in the castle, Ichabod, was perhaps the most beautiful man anyone had ever seen. He had snow-white skin and jet-black hair that tumbled in waves over his sharp features. His eyes were a deep green, a green that mimicked the color of the forest he often found himself hiding away in. About once every few months, Ichabod would come down to the village on a particularly rainy day. The villagers would all gawk and stare, nervous about the strange man's presence. Whispers danced through the town, carrying on them one rumor, and one rumor alone, that Ichabod was a vampire. Ichabod would avoid their eyes as he continued his journey through the rain, a journey that always ended at the local library. There, he would stroll inside and look around for hours, picking books off of shelves, running his long, thin fingers over the leather bindings and the smooth pages. He had a way of rustling the pages as he paged through them that filled the room with a steady, soothing rhythm. A ch, 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 ch noise that seemed to rise into the air and stay there. The librarian, Tessabel, would sit at her desk and watch the man through her glasses. She was a well-admired figure in the community, the smartest person in the town, and equally useful when it came to knowledge of the farms, forests, and carpentry. For years, her family had begged her to get married to a banker or business owner in the town, but Tessabel always refused. However, she could never tell her family that the handsome, pale man paging through her books was the reason she refused to look elsewhere. Over the years, Tessabel watched Ichabod with wonder and admiration as he opened each book. It was the way his eyes lit up, the way a smile tugged at the corner of his lips, that made Tessabel want to get closer to him. It made her want to know him, to understand the emotions that were welling inside him. She often tried to speak to Ichabod, but he was a man of few words. Even then, she could see the warmth in his eyes that made her want to get closer to him, no matter what the townspeople said. On one stormy day in October, the landscape was painted every color of orange, brown, gold, and fiery red as autumn swept across the countryside. There was a bite in the air, a reassurance that summer had come to an end. Jack-o'-lanterns adorned the streets, their orange glow coating the town in swaths of calming colors that put people at ease. Dried corn hung from every window and door, swaying in the breeze, reminding everyone that now was the time to harvest and hold loved ones dear. Rain fell over the town in a consistent drone so loud and steady that it seemed as if that was the only sound to be heard. Everyone was quiet, curled up by the fireside or tucked under warm wool sheets with a book. But Tessabel was at work. She poked the fire, sending embers buzzing into the air. She watched as they floated up near the bookshelves, alive and bright, and slowly began to fizzle as they neared the stone ground of her humble library. The wooden door creaking open behind her was the only thing that could draw her attention away from the beautiful sight. It was none other than Ichabod. The sight of him made her heart swell in a way that only young love can. She greeted him with a smile and a hello. She knew her face was flush with color, perhaps the color of a rose. But she didn't look down with embarrassment or try to suppress the authentic emotion. She simply gazed at Ichabod warmly. To her surprise, Ichabod smiled back at her and chimed in a charming tone. "Hello, Tessabel. It's lovely to see you." Tessabel smiled in delight. Him speaking her name may just have been the sweetest sound she had ever heard. "I don't believe you've ever spoken to me before, sir," she whispered in a honeyed tone. Ichabod chuckled. "I suppose I haven't. I just couldn't wait any longer." With those words, Ichabod turned to face the bookcase. Tessabel could see the slim silhouette of a smile on his lips. She returned to her desk by the fire, tapping her pencil against the edge of the desk, stealing glances at Ichabod every chance she got. Ichabod wandered from book to book over the next few hours. Sometimes he ran his finger along the book spines until he found just the right one. Other times, he'd crouch next to the fire beside Tessabel, getting lost in the pages of a thick novel. He and Tessabel didn't exchange any words, and perhaps the most remarkable thing about that was that neither of them minded. They read their prose in content silence, only breaking their concentration to smile at each other on occasion. By the time night was beginning to fall, Ichabod approached her desk. His eyes shimmered with emotion as he handed her a stack of books. "I'd love to check these out, miss." Tessabel turned to her papers and noted the books he was taking. "You've made some wonderful choices here," she chimed, paging through the books in his pile. "They're the last books I have to read here." "I've almost read the whole library," Ichabod replied. There was no pride in his words, no pretentious nature. Tessabel promised to order more books for Ichabod. He smiled at her with gratitude before slipping out into the storm. Tessabel watched from the foggy window pane as he meandered down the cobblestone streets and entered the cedar forest in the distance. She couldn't help but imagine a life with Ichabod. Sure, she barely knew him, but there was something about him that drew her to him. The townspeople feared him because they believed him to be a vampire. But deep within herself, Tessabel knew he couldn't harm a soul. As she blew the fire out for the night, she couldn't help but notice a book on her desk. A Fateful Meeting, her favorite romance novel, and one of the books Ichabod meant to check out. Though the town would frown upon it, she knew in her heart she'd have to bring the book to Ichabod the next morning. When she awakened, the storm had grown even more impressive. Trees quivered in the autumn gale. Rain lashed at the ground consistently. The steady drone rap, tap, tap, tapping over her tin roof. She pulled a warm wool cape over her shoulders and pulled her hair back in a simple silk bow. As she began the journey up through the cedar forest, she was taken aback by how astonishingly beautiful it all was. The fog was wrapped around the trees like a warm, thick blanket. Raindrops clung to willowy ferns, dripping down, 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 down the leaves as they were descending a ladder. The air smelled of earth and forest and flora, an aroma that awakened and soothed her senses in the best possible way. At her feet, toads huddled under toadstools, their eyes turned up to the edge of the mushrooms, watching as rain rolled off the slick caps and onto the mossy ground below. Though the storm was reaching its zenith, there was a sense of calm that could be found throughout the whole forest. As she continued on the journey, she held the book close to her chest. No one had ever gone to Ichabod's house before. She thought she should be nervous, afraid, unsure, but for some reason, she felt at peace. She felt as though she was meant to journey up this path, meant to finally confess her feelings to the mysterious man who she had dreamt about for all these years. Soon, the castle came into view. It was nestled between a rocky outcropping and a stunning open moor. The fog hung low on the moor, painting the wispy blades in thick dew. The already impressive castle was even more incredible up close. Moss and ivy clung to the stone walls, winding its way up to the crenel and merlon rooftop. Stained glass windows peppered the home, and the windows that weren't stained glass were aglow with flickering candlelight. For a moment, Tessabel stood in the rain and marveled at them. The castle had a mysterious air about it, but that air only drew her in. As she approached the heavy wooden door, she took a deep breath. She could hear her knocks radiate throughout the home. Soon, she could hear slow, smooth footsteps tap, 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 tap their way toward her. Ichabod opened the door with a smile. His black curls hung in front of his eyes, only making his green irises shine brighter. There was a slight smile on his lips, and the side of his face glistened in the glow of hundreds of candles. "I believe you forgot this, Ichabod," she said, handing him the book with a grin. Ichabod pulled the book against his chest. Only then did Tessabel notice his clothes. A billowy white button-up shirt that exposed his collarbones, and a pair of sleek black pants that hugged against his legs. No one in town dressed like that, and it certainly intrigued her. They hovered like that for a long moment, taking each other in without judgment or fear of judgment. Finally, Tess found the words spilling out of her mouth. "I'd like to know you, Ichabod." Ichabod's smile grew larger, but he turned his back slightly to her as he muttered, "You're the first townsperson to want that, Tess. Are you sure?" Tess didn't need to think. She simply nodded. Ichabod stepped closer to her, inches from her face. Their eyes met, and sparks seemed to fly around them as the world slowed down. "You're not afraid of me?" he asked. The words seemed weak and young, like a child asking a question they don't want the answer to. "I never have been." The words spilled from her lips, effortless and true. Ichabod's eyes softened as he took a step back, holding the door open for her. He invited her to spend the afternoon with him, and so their marvelous day together began. Tess was taken aback by the sheer beauty of the castle. The windows rose from floor to ceiling. As the rain fell, the shadow of each droplet reflected on the castle floor, creating a kind of moving mosaic unlike anything she had ever seen. In the entryway, a chandelier hung from the mahogany wood ceiling. It reflected the orange candlelight, casting the room in a warm glow that juxtaposed the cool gray of the outside. At the end of the room, a fireplace crackled with heavy wood logs. Sparks danced and flickered through the room, untethered and free. The room was lined with dozens of plants, creating a natural feel that put Tess at ease. Ichabod took Tess by the hand, leading her away from the breathtaking room. She looked back at the room as they walked away. Ichabod followed her gaze and chuckled. "We can go wherever you'd like, Tess. But there is one thing I'd love to show you." His thumb rubbed reassuringly over the back of her hand. In that simple gesture, Tess felt more understood than she ever had been in her life. Though they had spoken few words, she felt as though she was connected to Ichabod, as though this was meant to be. Ichabod led her to a set of French doors at the end of the hall. The doors were a dark mahogany, carved with images of faraway lands and animals. Tess traced her fingers over the intricate designs, marveling at them. Then, Ichabod pushed the doors open, and the most beautiful room Tess had ever seen came into view. The library. It was nearly 3 stories tall. The farthest wall was glass floor to ceiling with dark window panes crossing it. Even in the rain and fog, Tess could make out the entire vibrant valley floor below. The bookshelves were a rainbow of colors, sizes, and shapes. Books reached the ceiling dozens of feet above them. Sliding ladders cornered either side of the room, their fresh lacquer glistening in the candlelight. In the center of the room, dark green velvet couches surrounded a fireplace. lush handmade wool and fleece blankets piled on the couches, inviting you to sit down and relax. And though it was beautiful, Tess had one question that needed to be answered. If you have all these, why did you need my library? Ichabod smiled and settled onto the couch. It wasn't about the books, Tess. It was about the woman handing them out. A sense of comfort and belonging washed over Tess. All those years, he had felt the same way she had. But they had sat in their comfortable silence, never once letting it be known. Perhaps, she thought, they had waited the right amount of time. Tess retrieved a book from the impressive shelf and curled up on the soft couch. Ichabod pulled a blanket over her as she gently leaned against him. Ichabod wrapped his arms around her, embracing her in a way that Tess had only ever dreamed of. Outside, lightning brightened up the dark sky. Thunder crackled through the air, its rumble reminding the world to unwind, stay inside, and enjoy the slow pace of a stormy day. Tess read her book aloud to Ichabod, the thunder and crackle of the fire joining in as soothing background music to her story. Ichabod brushed his hand against her hair as she spoke. On occasion, she glanced up to see him gazing at her with admiration. When she finished the book, they stayed wrapped in each other's arms for quite some time. Ichabod confessed to her the truth she had always known, the truth that had never truly scared her, the truth that he was, indeed, a vampire. He lived in this castle for decades, afraid to interact with the townspeople, afraid of being rejected by them. He lived a life of solitude in the castle, longing for the day he would find someone he could spend his life with. As he spoke of his past, Tess found herself falling more and more in love with him. Ichabod promised he would never hurt a fly. There were other ways to sustain himself without harming humans, without ever harming her. As Ichabod finished his long tale, he looked to Tess with a kind of desperation she had rarely seen. A desperation that was rooted in years of solitude and in years of fear. He waited for a response with wide eyes as he absent-mindedly played with her hair. Tess placed her hand on top of Ichabod's, calming him. I think I'd like to stay with you here for quite some time, if that's all right. Ichabod's expression relaxed. He leaned in slowly, placing his lips against her forehead. The kiss made Tess feel as though she was melting, sinking into the couch, sinking into a place of absolute peace and elation. I'd like that a lot, Tess, Ichabod cooed. With that, Ichabod led Tess through the castle. Tess glanced around the large home with curious eyes. For all those years, he had shut himself in here, alone. She squeezed his hand as she thought about the future with him. A future where this home could be filled with laughter, smiles, and warm affirmations spoken in romantic whispers. As they wandered through the corridors, Tess found herself becoming more and more sleepy. Overhead, the rain had begun to fall even louder. The candles all seemed to crackle and pop, filling the air with the comforting symphony of the elements. Just as she thought things couldn't get any better, they entered the conservatory. Raindrops splattered against the clear glass ceiling, trailing down, 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 down into the sea of ferns, just beyond the windows. The room itself was cobblestone with swaths of flourishing green plants. A picnic blanket in the center of the room housed a steaming teapot, filling the room with a sultry aroma of herbs and the earth. Ichabod sauntered with Tess through the indoor garden. He showed her plants she had never even heard of, and she gave suggestions on how to grow them stronger, healthier, and more beautiful. Birds flitted from branch to branch. A blue jay, in particular, sang a charming melody just above their heads. Being in this warm, inviting space and looking out to see the rain-soaked landscape was a feeling unlike any other. It was as though she was viewing the world for the very first time. Tess and Ichabod settled on the blanket and lay down in each other's arms. They gazed at the ceiling in awe, taking in the sight of the birds flitting around in their own little world. Taking in the sight of the lightning cracking through the sky just above their heads. Tess felt her love for Ichabod grow stronger with each passing second. Her hands wrapped around his neck, pulling him against her. He kissed her softly and sweetly at first, but the kisses grew to be ones of passion and desire. They slowed as the rain above them sped up, drawing their attention back to the sky once more. Ichabod leaned in, giving Tess one soft kiss on her neck. In that action, he made a promise that she would always be safe, a promise that his love for her was true. They lay in each other's arms in the forest within a forest, in that world within a world, for hours. They watched the ebb and flow of the storm, the slow change of night into day. And for the first time in their whole lives, they weren't going to bed alone. Tess felt her eyes grow heavy as she laid her head on Ichabod's chest. He wrapped a comforting arm around her, inviting her to be as close as possible. With the rain pouring down above them and the birds settling into their nests, they both began to drift off to sleep. For the first time, they were home. I hope you've enjoyed this sleep story, and it has helped you reach a night of peaceful, relaxing sleep. Please join me again tomorrow for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.